Hello there. Today I'm going to do a demonstration of a project that I worked on for my sophomore year, the summer of my sophomore year. This is a Texas Hold'em bonus game, and it's meant to allow the player to play as many rounds of Texas Hold'em bonus as they wish. Every time at the end of the round, it will reset the game, essentially allowing the player to play again until they're satisfied with the results. This game has the ability to record the score of the player and a bunch of their stats based on how well they've done through their many different rounds, and it allows the player to reset their stats if at any time they wish. To give a demonstration of this game, I'll be running the app to show what the user interface looks like. Here it is. You can see that you have the dealer and the player. The dealer being the computer, and the player is who you are playing as. So you can change the amount of money you're betting in the beginning, but it cannot exceed the total amount that you have here. And it will basically also take the bonus amount and check if these two cards qualify for any of these bonus requirements. And if it qualifies for any of these, then you get the multiplier. You multiply whatever the qualified cards are, the number next to the qualified cards, by the bonus amount. And regardless if you win or lose the round, you can get the money for the bonus. As for the ante, the amount you bet here is pushed if you don't have a straight or higher, but if you have a straight or higher, you can win the ante. And for the flop, turn, and river, you will earn money from those if you win the round overall compared to the dealer at the end. Every time you play, it will give you the option to either fold or play after you see your first two cards. And if these first two cards meet any of these requirements, it will be multiplied to your bonus at the end of the round. So, for example, if right now you see this, you have a jack in the 10 and you want to fold, it will end the round and it will say good fold if you have a worse hand than the dealer, but it will just say you folded if you had a better hand at the end. As here, I have a good fold because I pair of jacks and pair of jacks, but he would have won overall because he had better cards after the pair of jacks that we both share from the community. So he would have won. And since I folded, I lost less money. Therefore, it's a good fold. And you can see here, if I play and I lost, I lose all the money, including the ante and the bonus amount, because I didn't qualify for any of these. If I want to check to see how I am doing so far, I can go to here and see that I have 0 wins so far. Not very good. And I can see the highest amount I had and the lowest amount of money that I had. So the highest amount of money was 10,000, and since I've never won, it only went down from there. And you can see the best hand. The highest hand is a pair of jacks. In case you want to know what your best current highest hand is out of all of your rounds, and you can go to here to reset your money. You want to start over, and you can go here to the menu if you want to go to the main menu screen, and you can click on the game to go back in. So that's the user interface and also the main game itself that the player is going to be playing with. And you can see here that the code for the entire game is all the way here, from here to here. I used a bunch of libraries containing different classes in order to import. I used a library for the different classes, such as the library of PIL to import ImageTK. All of these classes are used to either process the images or to set up the widgets and the user controls that allows the player to actually play the game itself. I did not code the buttons that you saw in the game in. I imported those from Kinter, and I imported the image processors that will process the image from my computer and display on the Kinter window, which I also imported from here, TK, and it will just show the player all the visuals that they want. For the cards, for the files representing the different cards and visuals in my game, if you want them, I can send them to you. But if you want to customize what your cards look like, then you can also pick your own visuals or create a separate file for the different cards and displays, and then process the file paths to those images on your own, which can create custom displays on the Kinter window allowing different types of visuals depending on what kind of cards you want. For example, if you want to have a different style of art, then you could just choose your own images and have it be processed by image here and displayed on Kinter. As you can see here, I created a dictionary of the different types of different ranks, and here are the different suits, and you combine them to create the entire deck. And here is the function used to shuffle my entire deck, which allows at the beginning of each round to have a completely different and unpredictable combination of cards that are then distributed to the player and the dealer. And you can see here that the image is processed in order to be displayed later on when the game starts. You can see here that this is the index used to store all the different types of hands that can be shown, that would be shown to the player. Depending on what the player's current highest hand is, there will be a display above the player that would tell the player what their highest hand is. So for example, if their highest hand is a pair of sixes, then it will just create a string that says pair 6 and sixes and display above the player, telling them what their current highest hand is. And it's useful for the player to decide how their game is going. And I have all of the different types of hands all stored here in these dictionaries. I have a copy of these dictionaries inside down below that I combined into a function that can be that can execute and create the string and send it to my class for Texas Hold'em bonus. But here is just a copy that I can run individually just to troubleshoot at a later time if I find any problems with them. Here's the bonus. This function is meant to decide what if the player qualifies for any bonus multipliers. And you can see it uses if statements to determine what to return. It returns the multiplier amount and tells the class what to multiply the bonus, the amount that you bet for the bonus by. And you can see here that I run the bonus just to troubleshoot at certain times. Right below the bonus function, you can see the deciding round. The deciding round determines the highest hand that the player has. It takes each hand that the player has and stores them in sequential order by value. And you can see here. And it will return all of the possible different types of hands and tell the classes the order of the values that each player has. I run this function twice, one for the player, one for the dealer throughout each round. And it will tell at the end all of the possible hands that I can compare between the two players. Right below that is deciding. This function is meant to compare the decks of the player and the decks of the dealer to find out who really won. And I had to account for the different cases in which there could be a tie potentially. If the first two hands are the same for both players, then it'll move down until it reaches a certain hand for the nth hand for both players, and it would determine that it's a tie if they're still equal at that point. And you can see here, I use a bunch of if statements and also different cases. I use breaks sometimes in order to eliminate possibilities. If it's not if one, for example, if the first for both are not equal, if the player has a higher first hand than the dealer, then it's gonna end up as a win for the player. And you can see here that I go down to here, and then I compare. This entire block of code is used to compare whether or not there is a tie. I move down. And I see if the nth hand for both the player and the dealer are still equal in order to determine if there is a winner overall. And once I decide if there's a winner or loser, I return either W for a win for the player or L for a loss for the player, or a D for a draw for the player. And it will also return whatever hand the player or dealer has that is the highest, the highest. And overall, the amount that they win or loss will be told to the class object, the class, the Texas Hold'em class, which will then update to update the total amount of money that the player has at the end of the round. So after this class, after this function, I have the update index, which accumulates all the database, all the dictionaries representing all the strings for the hands that will be displayed to the player, telling them what their current best hand is. Every time I call update index, it will tell them what their highest hand is currently. And these multiple dictionaries are used to generate the strings representing the hands that the player could potentially have. Bonus display creates the highlights at the bonus, the right-hand side. If it qualifies for any of the bonus multipliers, it will highlight that bonus multiplier for the player so the player can understand that they've qualified. For the bonus reset, it basically just turns off the highlights at the end of the round. So the player knows that everything is reset properly. In case that they qualify for a bonus, that will also reset using this function. And here you can see the poker, the parent class for Texas Hold'em bonus, the poker, which is generally used for multiple games. If I'm going to create multiple games that besides Texas Hold'em bonus, then poker would be the parent class for all of them. It has the general stats and it has the money and the menu that will be shared across multiple different games. Different games have different types of visuals and displays and sometimes interfaces, but they also share widgets and share certain stats and menus, especially for the ones representing the money or telling the player how their winning streak or losing streak. That will all be shared. And so I created a parent class so that they all have a commonality in that area. And below you can see that I have the menu class, which pulls up the main menu, the blue menu. You saw that I will, if I'm going to add other games, include all of the possible different poker games a player can play and allow them to select from. This is show next. Show next basically pulls up the Texas Hold'em bonus game when a player decides to start a new game of poker. Texas Hold'em bonus is here. Whenever I first run this, I create the frames for my game, including the green background, and set up all the buttons and stats, as well as creating the card displays. And you can see here, every time the player makes a bet, I update, show player check, show player. I created different function representing each time the player clicks on the bets or for the check. When a community card is revealed, there will be an update, and each function represents a different update up until all 5 cards in the community are revealed. And you can see here, it goes all the way down to here, and that represents all of the possible updates, including the folding. If the player decides to fold in the beginning, I have a function that is called upon by the folding button, which will then tell the player that they've lost a certain amount of money, as well as telling them whether or not they would have lost or won if they hadn't folded, by telling them whether it's a good fold or just you folded. So betting check here determines if the amount that the player inputted for their bets are valid, both for the bonus and ante, so that they don't go out of bounds or have a negative amount. Betting is here. Here it decides whatever it is the button that they press in case when they bet. And checking is basically when they decide to skip that specific bet. For example, if they don't want to bet for the flush, not for the flush, for the turn or the river, then they can skip that and use the check button. It will then move on from there, but it will still reveal a new card in the community, unlike the folding, which will reveal all cards at once. And wrap buttons basically determines at the end how to reset the entire display so it goes back to what it looked like in the beginning. And you can see here, I also have a method called win-lose, which takes the win or lose from the function outside of this class and determines whether the player will lose money or win money this round. I'll create a pop-up then that tells the player whether they won or lost money. You can see that starting from here, the win is called when all cards are shown. The win-lose is called, telling the player how much money that they have now, and also updating the stats for the win or lose streak. And you can see below the win-lose is win-lose 2. It is for the fold, and it's called when alongside the fold function to tell the player whether it was a good fold or bad fold. This is used to supplement the fold. It's a helper function used to supplement the other folding function as well. And it's a win-lose 2 because it's another scenario. It's a different path that the player can take. Instead of playing the game, they can choose to quit, in which case they'll lose a certain amount of money for their ante. And here is the functions representing the different stats that you could be shown for example, the amount of draws you have, the amount of wins you have, and the win streak and the loss streak. These basically test your input fields to see if all the numbers, your inputs are legitimate. You cannot have, for example, letters inside the ante amount. You cannot bet letters, for example. So these check that, and reset just resets everything. And this is just used to test whenever I'm running. This is used to execute and pull up the window. It starts with root equals TK, and it sets the window size, and it pulls up the game for the player to start to play. At the end of each round, it will basically reset, as you saw with the wrap, and then it will allow the player to loop through the game as long as they feel like they want to continue playing, and they can reset whenever they want. As you can see here, for the menu, there's still going to be potentially more games, and if you want, we could work together to create different types of games or update the different features that the player can have for this app. They could have more, there could be more dynamic aspect to this gameplay than just simply repeating through the rounds like I showed before. And we could also, with multiple people, update and use and create animations that allows for the player to have a more interactive experience with the game. Overall, the basic concept of Texas Hold'em is bonus is shown here. I created a basic game that allows you to cycle through and play against the computer. But if you want a complicated AI or algorithm that allows for the computer to be more unpredictable of whether or not they decide to check or bet each round, then that might require extra work and updating the code and multiple people to both troubleshoot and help decide how to move forward with this project in this direction. Thank you for watching the presentation, and have a good day.